Hello, Bunnycast is coming your way. Today we're talking about fanfiction and what we hate about it. We're talking about all sorts of things about fanfiction. We do a bit about what projects we're working on, and we also ask a bit about getting your money to us. We need your money, please, please.
First rule of Fanfiction Club: you don't talk about Fanfiction Club.
Second rule of Fanfiction Club: price a lot.
So there's what's rule number 3?
Kill Squato.
Does that mean we have to go to Australia to do that?
This is the Bunnycast Network.
That file you sent is basically says somebody saying,
Yeah, that was you.
That's great. I'm just going to save that and keep playing it. You found a worthy substitute for Killerfish.
Well, we know what his ringtone's going to be now.
What?
We know what his ringtone's going to be.
Just 2 months from now. Bunnycast 49, Part 2.
The Echo-ening.
No! Okay, welcome back to the Bunnycast. I am your hostess name, Helen. We also have with us Lord Killerfish, Squato, and our guest host is coming back for the second segment, brave woman, the Cute Ninja. Say hi, the Cute Ninja.
Hi.
For those of you who are jumping in late in the game, this is the Bunnycast. The Bunnycast is the official podcast of the Bunny community. The Bunny community is the official fan community of Elgunashive. Elgunashive and the Bunnycast are not related. Let's jump into our discussion segment. For those of you who have not been paying attention to the Bunnycast, shame on you. But to get you up to speed, previously on the Bunnycast, for the last discussion segment we did, we talked about fan fiction, and originally it was just going to be for the one show, but we realized very quickly we have far too much to talk about. So
we like ranting about bad fan fiction.
Do we ever? So we're going to continue our fan fiction discussion. And Killerfish, you actually had a very salient point during, it was either the pre-show or during the break. No, I think it was the pre-show.
I believe the pre-show.
Yeah.
But I brought it up in the break as well, because, I'm like that.
Yes. So why don't you start us off in our discussion with that?
Right. What I feel really needs to be spoken about is writers who are male who cannot write a female character. And sometimes this is just they can't write the characters that are already existing in a fan community in a certain series, But sometimes, if for whatever reason they decide they want to make the main male character a female character, just to see what that's like, and then find out they can't write that character at all because they've inadvertently hit both the bimbo and the nymphomaniac buttons on the reverse gender device.
Ranma 1/2 fanfics are kind of notorious for that, for the, obvious reason that,
Yes.
Ranma turns into a girl on a fairly regular basis. But moving even beyond that, it's very... I mean, if you want to know if somebody is a misogynist or not, or in any way sexist in any way, shape, or form, have them write for a girl character. However it is they write for a girl character is going to show off whether or not they're sexist or not.
And this comes through a lot in their work.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even with some fictions where they're just using the main characters, there is a tendency for a male writer to be under the mistaken belief that all female characters are all females are very attractively hot and instantly must go find a male to make out with,
or a convenient woman, because
Yes.
naturally all the women are going to be super hot lesbians, or at least bisexual.
Yes, and it happens far too often.
But
I'm not against turning a character from a male character to a female character to see how they would react to that situation, but it's when it's done so very lazily like that, it really gets to me.
it's like if the good Ranma 1/2 fan fiction, Ranma is Ranma, whether in guy or girl mode.
Yes.
And there's never any question, is this Ranma speaking? Because from the tone, from the style, from the mode of speaking, this is Ranma, as established within the context of the story and the anime and manga. The problem for that comes in with when girl Ranma acts different from guy Ranma for no discernible reason. And the thing that really bothers me most about that is, even within the context of, let's say, like is very common for Ranma 1/2 fanfics, far more common than any of the noobs really think about. Let's make Ranma learn what it is to be like a girl. And so there's usually some big deal about Ranma and must learn what it's like to be a girl. There's only really two legendary fanfics that really pulled this off: Girl Days and Girl School. Girls, plural, school, as in a school for girls.
I would argue Genma's daughter as well.
Genma's daughter is an exception. We'll get into alternate universe versus divergence versus all this kind of thing in a little bit.
Just for reference, the actual series which I tend to find has a male character turned into a female character is actually Harry Potter.
And that's so annoying. And
the American cousin.
In any case,
Why? You could do so much better than Draco Malfoy. Why?
or Snape.
That's
Or
just
Potter
wrong.
himself.
That's just getting into another whole other can of worms.
Well, I was going to say is, with your mentioning about how they're doing bad female characters, the one bit that sort of slides in with that is with people that are writing sex, and yes, that is a whole separate can of worms on that. So many people can't write sex. It's not funny.
Yeah, well,
But-
unless you're writing a porn, don't write sex. And if you're writing a serious story, you're not writing porn.
Yeah.
So don't write sex.
You can have romance in there,
Yes.
but romance is not sex.
Yes. Contrary to what you...
Amen.
This should be a salient point for the review I am doing later.
I was going to say is there is another point with romance ones. If you're going to actually do romance, just don't write a regular romance novel.
Yeah.
Unless your fan base likes the romance novels. And for those people that don't know what a romance novel is, how a romance novel works, take a male character, take a female character, change whatever you want, it always ends out the same way.
We're talking bodice rippers, right?
There's a difference between a bodice ripper and a romance novel, in my opinion. A bodice ripper is where a female character who is dresses very formally and not very attractively, suddenly it turns out she's actually a very attractive character, and male characters instantly fall in love with her. And
the modern variant would be the hot nerdy girl.
Yes, the hot nerdy girl. Yes, and that in my opinion,
with Stacey's mum playing at that same time when the revelation.
And that's my opinion on what a bodice ripper is. A romance story, on the other hand, and you notice I've really ramped up my accent slightly, as happens when I'm going off on a tangent, because it actually makes me. It's actually something I've discovered, that when I'm talking for long periods of time, I actually have to enunciate what I'm saying. Because it actually helps me
romance
speak.
is.
Okay, a romance is. Thank you for pulling me back there. It's a story where two characters who, from different poles or from different areas, never before would they seem to go together, discover they have things in common, and it very slowly progresses. It's not an instant. Oh, we're suddenly married and have...
I hate you. I hate you too.
Let's make
Get me, damn it!
Yeah, something that develops naturally and more slowly. I think that's more of a romance story to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the topic of not being able to.
You're still on the same topic because, again, as listeners to the previous discussion will know, I'm predominantly Ranma 1/2 Sailor Moon and My Little Pony fanfics. So that's kind of where I draw my understanding and my base. There's going with the difference between sex and romance. There's such a massive difference between the two, and it's most evident in, believe it or not, My Little Pony. There's...
Oh, I just saw a bat go past my window.
Oh, cool.
There is a subgenre of My Little Pony fanfiction called the clopfic.
Right. Have they got the clop?
No, okay. In order to not inflict upon your brains what the concept of the clopfic actually is, I will simply distill it as so. It's basically pony porn.
My brain is completely destroyed.
Yeah, that's the area I've gone. I've sort of gone with. I find that I want to just burn myself after seeing some of that stuff previously.
Now, I happen to, because I was looking for My Little Pony fanfics, and a couple of these actually had decent ratings, and at the time there wasn't much fanfic to be had, I said, let me read this. It says it's about Twilight Sparkle visiting Canterlot. I will read this. And I find out that Twilight Sparkle's not just visiting Canterlot, she's visiting the princesses. And there's a little bit of a relationship triangle going on there, and I'll leave the rest to the reader's imagination. And it wasn't very good. It was not very well written. The characterizations were terrible. I will say the only enlightenment I got was understanding all of a sudden, oh, that's where that particular fan meme comes from. I could have gone my whole life without knowing that. The point is that pony porn, clopfics, they're bad. They're just very, very bad. They're the entire... I'll tell you that in a second. But there are pony romances, and They don't delve into the bedroom scenes. They don't delve into too much intimacy. They may venture, they may toe the waters there, but it's all about the relationship between these two characters. The best one that I know of, what's the name? Something Alone. Anyways, it's one in which Twilight Sparkle and the great and powerful Trixie wind up in a relationship. The 4 or 5 chapter fanfic is all about that relationship. Well, it was so well written, it spawned its own fanfic about their daughter.
Hang on, how does that work?
Magic.
Right.
Must go deeper.
So they had a daughter, and that was featured in a one-shot fanfic of that fanfic. That one spawned a fanfic from the original author of the original story. So you have a fanfic of a fanfic of a fanfic. Cue Inception noise here. In any case, each story segment was an offshoot of this original romance. And that, I think, is the real key to determining whether you've got just pony porn or porn in general versus a romance story, is if you can write an extension of that story and show that extension off without blushing terribly. Just a second. Then you've got yourself a romance. If you say this is a great story, it's a follow up to this one. Well, shouldn't I read that one first? No. If you're saying that, it's porn.
Side note: I gotta love how when we're joking about Inception, you've just gone so echoey and all that at the moment. Homer.
It's because Julian wandered closer to me.
It happens.
Let's talk a little bit about alternate universes and diversions stories.
Yes.
Well, I had some rules I sort of worked out. I hadn't actually, because last time I saved, because I didn't want to, I was working out the rules and thing. I wanted to make sure people did follow when they do their stories.
Okay.
Because I saved, that's why I got all these notes. Sorry. Yeah. As I said, I wrote a bunch of rules down. Basically, I reckon people really do need to follow, and if you don't follow them, you're failing, is the nicest way to put it.
What we could do is, after we finish the podcast, and after Squato's told us all these rules, we could make a nice website so that everybody who doesn't listen to the Bunnycast, and shame on you for not listening to the Bunnycast, can go there and see all of Squato's rules for good fanfiction.
The Bunnycast rules for good fanfiction. Rule number 1. Shame on you for not listening to the Bunnycast.
Well, the point is these rules, I'm actually, even though we're doing this discussion on fanfiction, I'm actually not limiting it to that. In fact, the points are even for movies, if you're going to want to make a movie, or you want to actually create just a whole novel, or just a short story, or a comic, or whatever.
No, actually, I'm going to be talking about original fiction later on, so go ahead. This is perfect.
Okay. So yeah, these points, these are some points. There is a lot more I could throw in, but these are the ones I'm running with at the moment. I've got 25 at the moment, but they are very good ones to go with. First one, write. If you don't know what that means, basically just write. Just write anything that comes to mind. Write any stories you want. Write them all down. Get that exercise going. Use that to learn the language. Make sure you know where you can see how you really do word things, learning your understanding of your audience, all that. It's very important just to write, just so you can actually get it. I would think.
Note that he did not say publish. You're just writing at this stage. Go on.
Yes, because that's another rule that comes up. Second rule, read. That's an important one. If you're, say, going to write or at least view, for instance, if you're going to write a science fiction story, I don't know, and just one of you pick a topic, a story type of genre.
Fantasy.
How much magical level?
Over 9,000.
Okay, so
Mid-level
really magical.
Mid-level with steampunk tendency.
Okay, go and search out any stories or any works that have that level of technology, that amount of magic in it, and see how these people are doing it. See how they're going with how they're creating the worlds. See how they're using the magic and all this. Now, that's not so you can go, oh,
you did it already. You did my story already, Phil Folio.
Now, that's not so you can just go, oh, look, you're just stealing I know this is what they're doing. I can steal all these ideas. No, while you're doing that is you can, A, see what the tropes are, see what works, and work out exactly what doesn't work. And use all that information that you've collected from that to basically analyze your own works. Third rule, research like crazy. Trust me, you will want to know what your story, if your story is for any setting or whatever your technology is or things like that. Make sure that they. What's this message? Okay, sorry, someone was just doing a quick message to me. Yeah, research like crazy. Make sure when you're doing a research that it's to the. It's a couple. Actually, there's 3 different points for it. One is your topic that you're doing with. Say you're writing a story in World War II, or you're focused on a certain part of it. Now, focus on these people. Learn the background. Learn what the differences were, for instance, as I said, World War II, what it was on the home front to comparison the war front, and what it was like for people.
Don't get all of your World War II knowledge from modern warfare games.
Or some of the movies, yeah.
Yeah.
Because trust me, there is a huge difference between what was the experience of the people in the home front to what was experienced on the war front, or even the people that were involved with the war, but they were basically, say, I'll use the example of American troops, the ones that were stationed in England throughout the entire war. They didn't see any actual combat, but they were there with the troops that were coming in, that were going into Europe. So these were the people that moved over to Europe. They got to see the bombings and things like that. And they even got to see some of the people that were coming back from there, but they never actually saw it themselves. They have a completely different experience to war than what people that were actually in the war itself, or those people that actually got to be in the military forces but stayed in the home front, or even people that took over their jobs. Completely different mindset. And the other thing is that you'll get from researching is you'll find very interesting tidbits you would never have actually have known about beforehand. And trust me, those interesting tidbits, they are a godsend in the story, because you can sprinkle your story with it and it actually makes your story more real.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. 4th rule. And this is what Homer said before, but I'm going to call it never write. Basically, never write your story with the expectation that it's going to be published or anything like that. In fact, never even write it in the first place. Just the first tip I actually give, if you're going to write a story which you do intend to actually publish, write, say, 100 or so pages, and then start your story. That 100 or so pages is your universe with those characters and things like that. You're basically working out how it all sounds, how it all works together. Everything is worked out there, so that you can use that information and you know what you don't like about these characters. You might even find the characters you're writing and you're working with and everything you're planned with is the wrong people. Trust me, that does happen. That you've got everything worked out, you've got this awesome character, this awesome story, but that's not the thing that really attracts your attention to it when you start writing it. It's something completely different, something that you just bypassed over. It was just a plot, it was just a little dot on the little map you didn't bother with, and you find out that is actually the real story. That is why you must actually write some work, but don't write to publish. Write to understand. So basically, never write is what I've put anyway. Rule 5. Know your tone and who shall read it. Trust me, that's a big thing. If you want a good example, don't write a story about devil worshipping. Well, I was going to say don't write a story about pro-devil worshipping for Christians, but then again I realised that that's actually a big segment of them because they like to point out how evil it is.
Yeah.
Better example, don't write a fantasy story for... Okay, no, that's wrong. I was going to say don't write a fantasy story for science fiction, but that's already been covered.
Yeah.
Someone can think of an example anyway.
Star Wars.
No, don't write, say, someone that's writing a story mindset, but it's actually for a completely wrong people. It's hard to say that nowadays because of how much the market's broken down. But the general point is, when you're writing the tone, make sure your tone of how you're writing it, say if it's for adults, make sure you're going to have adults. And as we covered before, if you're going to write porn, write porn. If you're going to write something that has people that are going to experience emotions, things like that, don't write porn.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was how you should be focused on that. 6, know who was telling the story. Know who was telling the story, and how it's going to be told. For instance, is your story going to be in first-person perspective, as in focused entirely on one person, and that is the character that's telling it, and it's the experience that's happened to them? Is it in the second person, or is it even in the third person? Third person is basically your overview of everything. Second person is a mix of the two, but you're starting to get a feel for certain characters as the ones that sort of direct it. And the other thing is you can even have it certain characters can mix in for that, but be careful. General rule is, if you're going to write a story, keep to one tone, but you can mix in at different times. For instance, have a first-person story, but go with a side character. It's in the third person. But just don't
confused.
Go. Well, yeah, no, I understand exactly what Squato is saying. I've seen dozens of different ways of doing it. The only time I've ever seen a successful switch back and forth between a third person and a first person was when I was reading the Robotech saga. Oh, good God, was it 15 years? It was well over 15 years ago, possibly 20 years ago. It was like the last or the second to the last book. The story was being told from third person, and then all of a sudden, randomly, in one particular chapter, it focused on the first person for one of the characters. The author was either very good or I was very forgiving at the time, but he made it work. Most people can't. And
that's why if you're going to do that, try to write as much as you can. Because this is one of those points with knowing your tone. Work beforehand. If it doesn't work, drop it.
Yeah, and on a side note, if you're winding up changing perspectives, like let's say you choose first-person perspective for whatever reason, and
first-person perspective, my old nemesis.
You need to tell events that are not part of the one character's experience. So you decide to switch to first-person for another character. Okay, not the best way to do it. I've seen it work. Don't tell the same freaking story over again in the second person's perspective. Make sure you are telling new events that did not happen to the first person. I don't care if the events happen at the same time. I don't care if if you're talking about two characters that were even in the same room. The events have to be different for each character, or you are going to bore your audience to tears.
I can provide an example for this. If you've got two characters who are, say, on opposite sides of a wall, if you've written one character that they're doing something, don't let the second character know that that's what the first character has done, because the only person who should know what's going on both sides of the wall is the reader.
Well, that's just bad writing.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. And I mean that's one example of what can happen if you're trying to do first person for multiple characters in a single story. So what rule are we on, Squato?
That was 6. Rule 7.
We may have to cut this short. Go on.
Rule 7. Use natural language when possible. Trust me on this one. This is also particularly because, as I said previously, I've done some editing for a person from Peru, so their background is actually Spanish-based. Their stories are in English, so they're having to learn English language and all that. Another great example, if you're going to write, say, a story that's from an American first-person perspective, and you're not American, Americans spell things differently.
Yep.
Americans have different ideas.
Yep.
Know that.
Yep.
This actually reminds me of what somebody did during the war, Fred. you were talking about it, I think somebody made the mistake of thinking that the area around California.
Oh, yeah, that was Troy.
Well, I think you'd be better to explain this because I can
Okay.
vaguely only
Yes.
remember.
Okay, so war thread. It's about the same time we started talking about this. The setting.
Too soon.
The setting was. The setting is to be about 40 years in the future. No, not 40 years. Like 2 centuries in the future after.
250.
Thank you. A cataclysm occurs 4 minutes from now. You know, in the near future, which is supposed to be so close to our time that it's contemporary, a major catastrophe happens. The world rips in twain. Cats and dogs start sleeping together. Fire from the skies, etc. 200 years or so later, we have the situation in the war thread. We had, by that point, created like 10 different brand new countries, all of which were supposed to be inhabiting the North American continent. One of them was a breakaway from Mexico that had annexed part of California, at least the southern part. And that was going to be Mexicali. This was my particular contribution to creating a nation. Not that I had any characters in that nation, not that I was running the army, just my characters came from Mexicali. And I had created a Mexicali as being a very totalitarian, dictatorial state that was based on Mexican culture. Troy tried to write for Mexicali. Troy failed miserably because he had completely mischaracterized Mexico to such a drastic degree that I was telling people who live in Southern California, who know Mexican culture, at the very least from the migrants and immigrants who are here in Southern California, if they haven't been to Mexico directly. And I was just telling a little snippet, maybe a few sentences from what Troy had written, and they were dying of laughter. They had no idea of the context. They just knew that this was supposed to be a representative sample of what one person's idea of what this future version of Mexico would be like. And it was so laughably wrong that we wound up completely writing that scene entirely out of the war thread. Just you know, that doesn't work. It doesn't fit. Nothing about this is correct. Bye. And Troy didn't like it, but them's was the facts. And as one person who, completely unrelated to the war thread, said that if you're going to write for Mexico, you'd better... Sorry, a little interference. If you're going to write for Mexico, you'd better have the Presidente of Mexico drinking $2 tequila in a cheap dive bar with a silver-plated Rolls Royce out front.
So yeah, know the area you're writing for.
Yeah, which is, I'll say at a side point from War, which I remember it was because we had the country I had in there, which was I haven't seen him in years. But the point we had is that I kind of was lazy enough, I've realised later on, to actually still be writing as someone from Australia, meaning I'm using my O's and U's when it's not used in American language and words. So I went, how can I do that? And that's part of the reason why I had the side idea came in of, well, when the US was starting to fall after that, they needed assistance and to help restabilise, and that's when they had they called in allies to come in, and one of those was the Australian government, ran their own little area, and that was when it all totally collapsed. That area effectively became a mini colony.
Yep, and it worked. It worked very well for the setting. Squato, we're going to have to put the rest of your rules on hold. Keep them handy. I like this discussion. We're going to use fan fiction as a long running discussion topic on this podcast, I think. But,
so you're up to rule 7. Make a note of it.
Jolene, you're not on mic.
Oh, sorry. I do want to interject something about the war thread. That is where the cute ninja was born.
Yeah, so it was.
And we're all better off for it, I think.
Yeah, so that particular, I think it was the first April Fool's that the war thread was around. Oh man, so many people were so pissed. Okay.
Actually, Homer, can I do one quick side one? It's actually someone's 5 rules. I just want to point out how wrong they are, in particular one rule.
Okay.
But this is one that people probably heard of. Robert A. Heinemann, the author. He came up with 5 rules, and
Heinlein.
went the thick. What was that?
Heinlein?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. The guy that did Starship Troopers, the book.
Yeah, Heinlein. Go on.
Yeah. He came up with 5 rules. Now, the point is that I should make is when he wrote these rules, it was in the 1930s. A very big point, because at that time, his big money source was the pulps. If you don't know what the pulps are, the pulps were a type of genre that for science fiction that, in a sense, really did create science fiction. What's the problem with it? They're god-awful to read nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of the big ideas are really in that. And that's what really drove them is that you'll have big ideas, big worlds, big characters. No subtlety.
Yeah. So
he
go on
came up with the 5 rules. 1 was, you must write. Okay, that's agreeable. 2, you must finish what you write. Again, agreeable. 3rd rule, you must refrain from rewriting except to editorial order. That I disagree with strongly. Now the point was, the other 2 rules are you must put work on the market, and you must keep the work on the market until it's sold. Not going to point with those 2, but the rewriting one. The point when he said that rule was that you basically would just write it out and send it out. If they didn't like it, tough. You keep selling it until someone would buy it. The thing was, this is why I said, when this rule was created, it was during the pulp era. The pulp era was when you could, it was very possible to become a writer just for writing short stories and doing it all the time. There was a lot of stories which were being written really too quickly and were very poor effort.
Yeah.
That's the perfect...
The thing is, these days, there is so much heavy competition in the writing field. Everybody is hoping to, quote, write the next great American novel. The problem is that everybody thinks that they're a better writer than everybody else. So they'll write a book and they'll submit it, and even if it's better than 94% of everything else out there, you're still not in the top 5%.
Mm-hmm.
It's like being an internet troll, but not being on the internet. Well, that's my quote for the day. I'm off.
Does that mean they live under a bridge?
Yeah,
Yes.
we only wish. So, yeah, I totally agree with you, Squato. That if you go back and you, like, let's say 3 weeks pass, and I've actually done this. 3 weeks pass, you go back and you look at what you wrote, and you're thinking, what in the hell was I on?
Oh, don't worry. That can even happen 5 minutes after you've actually written it sometimes.
That's true. Go ahead and rewrite it. I mean, for the love of God, it's your book. It's your story. Rewrite it.
Yeah. Because that's the point, was back in those days. You actually go and read, and I actually dare people to go and look through some of the pulps. They're all online for free nowadays. Well, most of the publishers do it.
Yeah.
Look at some of those stories. They're fun to read, but dear God, there's so many grammatical errors, so many misspelled words, and there's even statements just bizarrely don't even make any sense. But the person wrote them, and they got good money for it. And I do mean good money.
Yeah.
Back in those days, a story which they would have written, they probably would have got 5 cents a word, and they would have been a short story of a couple of $100. That would have been in those days. They would have basically got a car.
Yep.
For one short story. Nowadays, you probably wouldn't even get a lunch from that money.
Yeah. So we're actually drifting into an area I did want to cover. For those who think that we're just bagging on fan fiction authors, no, that's not the case. Every single mistake that a fan fiction author makes, a real author, a published author of original works has made that mistake first. Mm-hmm. I mean, the classic example, I kind of, last discussion I talked about the so-called space marine genre, which is really a terrible, terrible genre, but it's come about because people love the badass. The reason that people think that this badass character sells is because there are at least a dozen so-called sci-fi stories in which the main character is this badass space marine.
That's not counting the games that have, which is even more.
Well, let's disregard the games entirely. Long before the games, long before the movies, there was the badass space marine. And this character that never grew, never progressed. He was just this badass that everybody was expected. I will fall down and worship at your feet because you are the savior of all mankind and the universe and everything beyond. God loves you as his only son, even though your name isn't Jesus. You know, that kind of character. That character doesn't work. Nobody likes it. It doesn't sell outside of the people who think that that character is cool.
I'd like to read a novel where that character was bullied in his childhood.
The point is that those actually sold decently well for a little while because that was really all that people were writing. And somehow it became its own little thing. And so all these fan fiction authors are thinking, oh, well, I'm going to create this character. And because it's similar to all these other characters that were came out in these super popular novels, it's instantly going to teleport my fan fiction to infinite internet stardom. And everybody who actually likes a story with a plot and characters and believability and likes to be able to suspend their disbelief to the point where they can say, okay, you got magic, you got science, you got a little bit of steampunk here, and people can survive a trip through the black hole. I got that. Okay, because there's a story. But the Space Marine story doesn't have a story. It's just basically somebody's playing a video game on God mode and just walks through.
Which is actually a funny thing.
Which shoot it, bang, 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 bang.
Which what
How
else?
many
You
times
just
can you make an onomatopoeia?
one of the points I was going to make is that you just because you're saying that you reminded me of something I thought of a while back was that it's always funny with these genres which they're overused, they're over-troped, they're overdone. The funny thing is one of the things that's really driving it is, and the things they consider the tip pegs, the best examples of the stuff, are all works that are actually trying to either take the piss out of that genre, or they're either trying to explore it from a different angle. And they're the ones that are actually still driving it, still driving the worst of the excess, is actually the people that are trying to shift it into something completely different. But when this new work comes out, it's completely different, completely new, it's a new take on it, everyone else wants to just recycle what was there because it's just too common.
Well,
like a great example we gave was Halo, which was, even though it's a Space Marine, Halo is a big take on a different, completely different direction to how those stories work.
The thing that strikes me most is we were talking about the bad romance, where it's not a romance, it's just this attempt at. Remember a few weeks ago I reviewed Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand?
Yes.
Yep.
After I did that review, I was taking another stab at trying to plow through, I think it was chapter 8, after some ungodly amount of listening time. I think it had been like 36 hours of listening just to get through chapter 8, and there's a dozen more chapters. Anyways, it occurred to me that the reason that it seemed so familiar in the writing style is because I had read bad fan fiction written just like this. So, and the worst part is it's not even based on anything to have the benefit of, fan fiction can at least be as popular as the people who are willing to read through the crap in order to get to the good stuff. Again, if I had been Ayn Rand's editor, I would have taken a red pen to that script with a vengeance, because it was not well written. There was the romance was just terrible.
So I put on that home. That actually is what happened multiple times. In fact, one of the films, there was such a bad not the Fountainhead. It was the original version for the Fountainhead. The guy who wanted to do that, he wanted to delete out this entire 8-minute segment, which is basically the main character saying how awesome the main character is. She bitched to the studio, and the studio basically kept it in. And the reason for that is because she actually had done something that really doesn't work, which was self-published. And the reason why it worked is because she basically had friends in high society that sold it and made people read it. So it became
You will
popular.
read this book.
So basically, she networked to get her story to be successful.
Yeah.
And because she was successful, she basically argued that nothing can ever change, and so because it's too perfect. When anyone can clearly look at it and go, "This is just bad."
Yeah, it's bad writing, which it really is terrible that it's bad writing, because there's a lot of very good points in it, and there are certain things that I swear to God, there are politicians who are practically directly quoting from Ayn Rand's Bad Guys, and it's like, if you had any concept of what you were saying, I think you would probably shut the hell up. And so to see these concepts, which are good concepts, and this practically prognostication of things that wouldn't happen for another 50 to 100 years, be wrapped up in this packaging that's so out and out ungodly terrible, it's disappointing, it's disheartening. It's like, okay, can anybody ever possibly do something that's going to approach being good for this, because something else needs to be done? And anyways, okay.
Don't count the movie, that was crap. It didn't make any money.
Oh, that's true. It has not been a success at all. So,
Right.
and one more thing to say about published authors. There are published authors who write bad fan fiction that, I'm serious about this. I have 2 examples on my bookshelves. I only have them because at the time I was being a completist when it came to collecting Star Trek paperbacks. Star Trek paperbacks are, of course, fan fiction. They're not, with rare exceptions, they're not written by any of the original writers. They're never considered canon.
They've got their own canon nowadays, but that's partly because the fact that people were like, "Oh, we want to see this continue on," and things like that, and so
Right.
that's how they've sort of pushed it. But the problem is, they're saying like 5 separate sets of canon for Star Trek as a result.
Yeah,
3 of them alone are for the books.
It's so inside baseball when you're talking about canon for the. So in any case, the first one is Dreadnought, and the second one is, I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but basically these are
Was it Battle Stations? This follow on to Dreadnought, was it? Or...
Yeah, you're right. How did you know that?
I've actually read
I've got
that.
those. I've actually got both of those books.
They are self-insert Mary Sue fanfics.
Yes, they are so. You're so right on that one.
They were terrible at the time. The only thing I actually liked from Battle Stations was the fact that they actually had Kirk on a sailing vessel. And it's like, oh, this actually is quite interesting.
That was
Yes.
interesting. Everything
That was the
after
best part of the whole story.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was the shortest.
Yes,
Okay.
that's practically the only thing I read if I go back to that book. I just read, oh look, it's Kirk on a sailing boat with a Mary Sue character. I'll just ignore her, even though it's from her perspective. Okay, done.
Yeah, pretty much.
Actually, I was going to say one side thing is it's funny with some of the reactions to some of the fans, even though they'll be terrible stories and even just be written out completely. A great example is the official Star Wars book, Star Trek book, which was taken out of canon because it was actually turned out to have been a slash fiction for Kirk and Spock.
Which one was it?
Fans of, I can't remember what it was, but it was from the 80s. It's basically an alternative universe. Something happened, and a new universe was created, and the Vulcans are an evil empire with the humans are the slaves to the Vulcans. And Spock was the master of Kirk, and yes, it went from that romance going on from that. And they realised, oh, we're in the wrong universe, and so they have to reset the universe so it's the right one.
Are you talking about Killing Time?
That could be it.
Well, there was no sex scenes in the book, if that's the one. From what you're telling me, that's the book you're talking about. But
well, he actually, the guy that created Star Trek, I just forgot his name.
Roddenberry.
Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah, he actually read that and ordered them to pull it from canon and from being sold.
I believe it. It's not the best offering. It's frankly a little bizarre. But yeah, I can see how that would be the case. Go on.
Well, the points I was going to make with that is it's funny with some of those terrible ones, how some fans can still try to defend them. A great example, that story. Why am I saying that it's one that people are trying to defend it? For those people that hate the last Star Trek film, for the simple fact that it didn't do the magic reset at the end of the film, and suddenly it's back to the original universe.
Not
Whereas
the reset button.
Yeah, as opposed to what this and basically every other time that Star Trek has actually explored an alternative universe, magic reset button at the end, exactly the same universe, no change. Or if you
they're just pissy that Spock's not gay for Kirk.
and and he's got a horror as his little squeeze.
Okay, so let's we're going to at some point in the future do a fan fiction discussion part 3. So let's do it just a little bit.
And I'll
fundraising.
finish off my.
Yeah, so we'll continue the list. I don't think we're going to finish it off. Let's do a little bit of fundraising. Just we're going to keep it short this time. Your donations are going to help to keep the Bunnycast network going, to continue to bring you fine quality comedy product.
To keep Killerfish in noodles and Doritos.
Hopefully soon, marshmallows.
Yes. I am a simple man with simple needs.
Okay, let's go straight into reviews. Let's talk about... I'm going to do a very quick review of an app. I'm going to talk about Camera Plus. It's an app for the iPhone, or iPod Touch, actually. Basically, if you want to be able to carry around a very good quality, professional grade camera studio with your nice 5 megapixel camera, this app will do that for you. First off, it shows you what photographers kind of swear by, or a lot of photographers anyway, the 3x3 grid. Basically, it puts it divides the screen up into 9 areas, evenly spaced, and the idea is that you line up like your point of focus on either where the lines meet or on the line. The best example would be if you have, say, a line of people. Not necessarily, posing or anything, but you're trying to take a candid shot of a line of people. They're all, say, sitting down. Your best shot will be to line up their eye lines as best you can on the top line of the horizontal. You take that picture, and pretty much no matter how you crop it, as long as you keep their eyes on that top third line, you're going to have a good picture. That's one example. It has flash controls. It can do multi-capture shots. The most popular part of it is the ability to tint using some built-in filters. You can make it look like it was taken with a 1960s Russian camera. You can make it look like the picture was taken using rosy overlay. You can make it look black and white. I've got a few examples up on my Flickr feed.
Sounds nice. Sounds like a good little program there.
Someone's not in pain at all.
No, I'm fine. Don't worry.
Killerfish, what are you doing?
I just banged my knee really, really hard.
Oh no.
Okay.
It's okay.
And
I
you're
muted
short,
the
which is
mic by the
interesting.
So let's go in order. Killerfish, your review is up next.
Yeah, this actually leads back to what I was talking about in earlier in our fanfiction discussion. There is a fanfic that I've read recently that does feature, yes, a male character suddenly becoming female, but it is done so well. It is done so well.
Okay.
Yes, Returning Echoes. It's a Full Metal Alchemist story.
Oh. Don't get many of those for some reason.
No.
Well, not anymore.
If anybody wants to read it, go to www.fanfiction.net/s/3532730, and it's written by Silken Dream Maid, and it's excellent. It explores from the perspective of Edward Elric, who's the main character, who's who this has happened to, and the journey. And I was reading it, I was going through it, I was 3/4 of the way through, and I thought, hang on a second, this isn't just a story, this is a romance story.
Aha.
And a good romance story at that.
So let me ask you this before we continue too much further in your review. Is this a continuation, an alternate universe, or a divergence?
A continuation, I believe. I mean, I haven't got that far in the Full Metal Alchemist myself, but I believe it starts up sometime after Edward manages to get Alphonse, his brother, back out of the suit of metal armor that he was bonded to. So it's a continuation, and everybody believed Edward had died 4 years ago, and Alphonse got Edward back, and unfortunately there was a slight mistake in the transferal process.
As you do.
That's the Deus Ex Machina for the whole series, but and they have a bit where they try to fix it, and then come to the conclusion they can't fix it, so Edward has to go on, keep moving, discover why people suddenly believe I'm going to use the word he here, because it's a bit confusing. Discover why people believe he should act in a different manner because his external body does not match his mental image. And then, as it progresses, it turns into a romance. Which...
So, just so we're clear...
Yes.
And so nobody gets an unpleasant surprise...
Yes.
Gender of the romantic pairing.
Yes, but no sex.
Right, okay.
Well, I'm totally not going to look at it now.
So Edward is male turned to female.
Yes.
The romantic interest party, male or female?
Male.
Okay, thank you. So if you're not keen on the idea of male ex-male pairing, don't read it. Otherwise, you're suggesting it's a good read?
Yeah, considering it's not something I'm usually into.
Right.
It's actually a very surprisingly good read. And yeah, if you're on fanfiction.net and you happen to run across it, don't be shy, go and give it a read and see what you think.
Okay, Squato, you have a couple of games for us?
Yeah, they're 2 indie games. They're 2 related enough that I basically figured there's no problem with doing it. First game is Audio Surf, and the second game is Beat Hazard. Now, Audio Surf is... How much is it actually? I'll get the prices for how much they are right now on Steam.
Okay.
So I'm just getting my library to come up.
You mean you haven't researched this already?
No, I had to close Steam.
Wait, we prepare for these things? What's going on?
Who are you? Where are we?
What's this thing on my head?
Who am I talking
to? The price for Audio Surf right now is $9.99 US. So whatever that equates to yourself.
So that's 99p over here.
Yeah, I should point out that
Shut up! Just shut up!
In Australia, they always list the price as being US dollars for the Steam store, because I know European markets actually have it advertised for whatever it is there in euros. For Beat Hazard, it's again $9.99, but they've also got the complete package, which also includes an iTunes and MA4 file support for it, and there's also that puts it at basically $13, or if you want to get that separately, $1. And there's also got an extra little thing with that has a pack. And there's the Ultra version, which is an extra $5. Sorry.
Describe the games. What are they?
Yeah. Shortest version of Audio Surf is that you're basically going to be racing. What are you going to be racing? Your own music. These
Okay, is this like a beat keystroke game?
Well, how it works is that you'll have this track. There's 3 lanes, and depends on the type of mode. There's one mode where you're basically just trying to race down the track and only collect certain types of blocks while missing the grey ones, because if you get the grey ones, you basically reset everything to 0. With that one, you're basically you're racing down trying to only get those ones. You also have ones trying to mix and match the colours so that you're doing all these type of things. But the whole point is that these tracks themselves are created exclusively from your own music. The game itself will analyse the track and will basically create an entire track itself for it to be raced down from your own music. It's really impressive. The game itself was written by one guy, and he released it a couple of years ago. And just to show how much good staying power this game is, as I said, it's probably 2006 it came out. It's still probably one of the most played games I actually have. It's one of the first games I got on Steam. It's one of the most fun I've ever had.
Released 15th of February 2008.
There we go.
Is this Mac or PC?
I was seeing... I just shut it all down.
PC, looks like.
Okay. Yeah, Killerfish has got it up. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, if you have Boot Camp or if you have a Windows PC...
Well worth it though. It's only available on PC. Sorry, on Steam. So that's the only place you can get it. So if you don't use Steam, you're kind of going to have to get it.
And it's not that big a deal. I don't care what the haters say. Haters going to hate.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that one's on Steam. The other one, again, on Steam, and I just actually had the page, but the store page is reset. Thank you very much, Steam. I'm just trying to see. I think it's only PC. Yes, it's also, again, only PC. Oh, yeah, only PC. Which is Beat Hazard. Beat Hazard is basically a Shrump fighter. Shrump shoot them up. If you don't know what a shoot 'em up, you really haven't played games.
Yeah.
What's a video game?
Again, this one has also worked off your music, and it really can, depending on the type of music, it can be easy or it can be insane, particularly if you got the new mode that came out, which is Ultra Mode. Ultra Mode has increased the amount of enemies, it's increased the amount of type of things you can do it, and dear God, is it hard.
So what you're saying is don't listen to speed metal with it.
Oh, you can. You can get very good points with it. Just expect to die a lot. But there is one very key thing I have to point out with Beat Hazard. Not so much a point for audio surf, but it's more particularly for Beat Hazard. If you suffer or anyone in your family does suffer from or may potentially have epilepsy or get epileptic fits, for the love of God and all that is holy, never play that game.
So I will not be playing that.
Oh, unfortunately, no. The reason I'll actually show up an image. I'll see if Homer what he says about it, because he can see if you can actually say how bad that would be.
Is this an image or a video?
Image.
Okay, it should be fine for Julian to at least look at.
I'm trying to get
the image is so bad. A still static image can cause an epileptic fit from anybody. That's how bad the image is. In fact,
that potentially could happen.
I'm going to give you that a blanket warning from any image that Squato sends you could cause this.
Well, that's because it's from Squato.
Here we go. What do you reckon there, Homer?
Well, let me open it. Jeez. Click. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?
Yes.
I can see. Yeah, I can see that. That would be a problem.
Yeah, because particularly when you can fill the whole screen with just that, and you'll have the enemies even shooting at you, because it's entirely possible that you could lose track of where an enemy has their. One of the things they'll have is they'll have what's plasma balls, which are one of the weapons that's fired at you. You can very easily lose track of it with your own stream of weapons fire. Particularly when it's the color of because the other thing is the color of the song and your weapons change with how it's going. It also changes the enemy
Oh
type.
dear God, I'm getting a headache thinking about it.
It's a good game, fun to play. Just don't expect to play it if you've got any epileptic issues.
Okay, thank you, Squato.
Thanks for the warning. I won't play that one.
Jolene, you have a book to review.
Yes, I've heard from many people that Orson Scott Card is a really great author. And I saw that he had written a series of historical fictions about women of the Bible. And so it was recently that Chris got me an audiobook version of Sarah. Sarah, for those who don't know, was the wife of Abraham in the Old Testament. And it is amazingly well written, well researched, and opposite to what was talked about earlier about how there's a lot of men who can't write women in different books or fan fiction, whatever. He really captures the mind of a woman. He really does well in... I don't know how he does it, but I'm like, if I were in that situation, I'd totally be thinking the same thing.
Well, he captures the mind of a woman by laying down traps. Big butterfly nets.
But, it is...
Yeah, mindy.
Very well researched, very well written, great character development, and without diverging from the true life story. Very, very awesome. I loved it. I look forward to more works by him.
So is it as if he actually had a time machine and was stalking?
Maybe his name is really the Doctor.
Well, what's his name? Orson Scott Card.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Right.
That reminds me of Orson Welles, and Orson Welles, H.G. Wells. He's a time traveller.
But I do agree with you, Jolene, on your point about how well he can actually write female characters, because I've actually read a couple of his other works, so I know where his tone is. I haven't read the ones that apparently piss a lot of people off, and there is certain books, or at least it's certain points he's going with about how hardcore Christian he apparently is, because he's got a wrong view for it anyway. We're not covering that, but I know some people...
He's not...
Yeah.
So according to most Christians, he's not Christian. So...
Well,
Yeah.
apparently he's apparently part of it is with certain views that he sort of said. A lot of the other Mormons are like, well, we don't actually go with that, but that's some of the things that he's apparently said. I can't quote you. I'm not even bothering
Like
to
what?
look at.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite popular Mormons because he just skewers Mormon culture. I love his parody work. He actually released... I forget the exact title, but it was basically like the Mormon Manual or something like that, the Mormon Dictionary, and it just eviscerated Mormon culture. This was like 15, 20 some odd years ago, and like the vast bulk of Mormon culture hated the thing. They wanted the books banned from Deseret Book. They wanted it taken out of publication, but it wound up being one of his most popular works at the time. Of course, he hadn't written the Enders series yet. But
No, he had done Ender's Game. He just hadn't actually continued the series.
yeah, okay, fair enough. For some reason, I thought it was before.
Ho-wender.
Any case, point is he's a very good author. I like him for some of his other work. Jolene likes him for his work on the Women of the Bible series. So let's go ahead.
Which I was going to say is the other ones is I do suggest take a look at his work. Some of his more he also does actually seem to explore other cultures outside his own. A good example is the Ender series.
Oh, yes.
He had that from a Catholic perspective. He did a very good job with it, I've got to say.
So I've heard, yeah.
Squato, just a quick question. Do you have a trivia machine shoved in your head for some reason?
No, I just actually read.
Oh, okay.
But I was going to say, the one that I know a lot of people will not are going to hear, and it's very hard to get, but it's probably one of his best works, is the novelization for The Abyss. Search it. If you know the film, which is by James Cameron, it's basically when where he got to understand how to do underwater films and all that type of stuff. It's also a classic science fiction film, even to this day.
Oh, yeah.
When they got to writing it, they actually went, how are we going to do to get the novelization for it? Because we've got to do a novelization. They went with Orson Scott Card. You get the more complete version of the story. You actually get the backstory. He actually writes all the details, so you understand how it all falls into place, particularly why those two characters, even though they're the ones that do ultimately go and marry each other in the end, you're like, oh yeah, it's going to happen. But you understand why they hate each other so much and what led them to actually going in the first place together. So if you want the story, search it. It's the most complete you'll get of it. It's the best one, I reckon, from him. And yes, he does female characters very well on it too.
Yeah.
Well, so there you go, everybody. Orson Scott Card. I think that's a general favorable review. Let's go ahead and do our little recap. We talked a lot in the first half about Comic-Con, and I think that best summarizes that. In this one, we continued our discussion, which will apparently now be ongoing, about fan fiction, and we reviewed Camera Plus. We reviewed Returning Echoes, a fan fiction for Full Metal Alchemist. There's a couple Steam games. Squato, what were the names again?
Audio Surf and Beat Hazard.
Thank you. And
worth playing, just if you don't have epileptic fits.
And Sarah by Orson Scott Card. Once again, we have been brought to you thanks to the wonderful website hosting Shastrix.com.
They now own 80% of the planet.
So be
and
sure
then they
to,
destroyed it.
Be sure
Just
to
because.
check in with them if you have hosting needs, especially for webcomic or podcasting. You can contact the Bunnycast as well as sending us any donations to bunnycast@gmail.com. And I have been Dame Helen, the LeatherClad. We have had the Right Reverend Sir Lord Killerfish of the Keenfans, the wonderful Hedgehog, the Cute Ninja, and Squato.
Yeah. We make fun of him, but without him, we would have nothing to make fun of. So.
You can, of course, find the Bunnycast members on community.910cmx.com, bunnycast@gmail.com, and shastrix.com/bunnycast. Projects. I am going to Comic-Con next week. Comic-Con! Squato, what are you doing?
I honestly half figured you were going to go Comic-Con.
Oh my god!
Killerfish, what are you doing?
I am going to be doing a live stream out of Killerfish Studios right after we finish recording this.
Woohoo!
So, livestream.com/Killerfish Studios.
I'll be tweeting it so people can... If you follow my Twitter link, I do actually point out when he's doing a live stream, so you'll see it on there.
And Jolene.
Particularly because he doesn't actually do much with his Twitter stream.
Project.
Both of them.
Jolene.
Hello. Yes. Besides going to Comic-Con, I have been working on going to the school to be a graphic arts designer and web designer. And so today I will be working on Chris's website for his new business called Naked Computers. I'll also be working on a logo for the place.
Okay, and as a reminder, Elguna Shive is the comic that we have gathered around, egscomics.com. You can follow Dan Shive's Twitter feed, twitter.com/DanTheShive. And I think that's about it. I'm not going to say
Google Plus if you're actually on it, because he's on there now.
Oh, yeah. If you have an invite, send it to other bunnies. I'm not going to say it, guys. I am not going to say it this time. So you're going to have to say it without me.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
I only just twigged what you were going to ask, because then Squato would say, goodbye, guys, in some sort of humorous attack.
Hey, you would say something about Bob.
No, I was going to say good morning because it actually is the sun's risen at the moment, so it's good morning.
Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time,
It's time to go.
Sweetheart.
Goodbye!
I got you, I don't care. Sometimes I feel like I'm controlled like a hero in a comic book, baby. Chasing one day after the next, no settle down, no easy text, baby. But it makes me feel alive when you're here by my side. You complete the two of us, you make the rules apply. It's a crazy world.
The Bunnycast is a production of the Bunnycast Network. The opinions of the guests and hosts are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the network. Crazy World is a production of Seth Jeffrey and is used without permission. Friendship is Magic at the Gala Instrumental Orchestra is arranged by Energy Force and can be found on their YouTube account.
Crazy world is all messed up all in my hair. I've got you, I don't care. Power in my hand, the world at my command. But now all that I want is just to be your man. It's a crazy world, in a twisted turn of reality. It's you and me, and I need you here to keep some sanity. We are but pawns in a faded game of cat and mouse. Maybe a couple of guinea pigs thrown out here and there. This crazy world is all messed up in my hair. I got you, I don't care.
Hello, start again.
That's the recording. Use it.
5, 4, 3,